Who was it started out so small? Who started with a dream, that's all? It was you, an Australian like you, who looked into the distant skies, saw horizons far and wide, amazing schemes and flying machines, who gave Australia wings. It was you, and you became our flying kangaroo. The spirit of Australia shining through. It was you, the spirit of Australia, the flying kangaroo. The spirit of Australia, the flying kangaroo. The spirit of Australia.
Hi, Gary Knight. I had 38 years with Qantas. Started as an apprentice in Sydney in hangars. Then I moved from there. We went over to Perth. We transferred over to Perth. I got involved with property over there. 7 years later, we transferred to Brisbane and started up the property for Qantas in Brisbane. And then the merger happened, and we just grew out. But 27 years we've been in Brisbane now, and just love it. Yeah, and the train, we picked the train because it was just never been on a first class sleeper of train, and everyone we talked to said you got to go on the train, and that was that was our main motion for getting us on the train. And it's a good little environment to sort of pre-start the celebrations. You get to know a few people. We've come across a few people that I've talked to on the phone a lot of times, but now I've finally met them in person. It's quite good. But the train's been good. The food is just excellent. The meals last night and this morning were just first class, really good. So we sat around last night and had a few drinks and a good chinwag with a lot of people. And one of the guys, Daniel, he got up and sang "Still Call Australia Home," and we all chipped in with that. That was really good too. Good fun. Yeah.
That sounds like it's been really good actually. Like I'm a little bit jealous. I'm only spending a small amount of time with you guys.
I think just celebrating Qantas has been such a huge part of our life. And it's just good to get with people of like mind who are all mostly long-term servers with the company. I suppose I was lucky enough in the department that I was in to meet a lot of people, a lot of departments. And it's just good to catch up with those people. Now we're all retired and.
Time to spend.
We've got a bit of time to spend, and when they said they're going up to Longreach for the 100-year celebration, we just couldn't get on it quick enough. It was we were really excited. Had a couple of good reunions over the last few years, and good to catch up with a lot of people. But this is really the icing on the cake, and it's really looking forward to it. Yeah, never been to Longreach before or Winton. So we thought this is a great opportunity to kill two birds with one stone. Have a look at Longreach, which we've been busting to get in and have a look at, and catch up with a lot of mates and friends. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, my name's David Thompson. I started on the 27th of November 1967 at Qantas Airways and stayed for 51 years and 2 months. And I started off in reservations as a trainee. Then I went into marketing training, and which entailed when Quantam reservation system had just was being introduced throughout the company in the reservations and the travel centres, ticket offices around the head office and around the state, and in the Asian Pacific region, which we were responsible for training. So I did that for a while, about 8 years, and then I went into market research. Then I went into sales, and then I went into, I was posted to Newcastle as sales manager Northern New South Wales. Then I transferred over in the freight section and was freight sales manager Victoria and Tasmania, based in Melbourne for 5 years. And then I moved back to head office as airmail manager, and that transitioned into global manager airmail, which was my last job. And I was looking after the postal business for about 20 years. So it was, all the overseas foreign post offices were my customers, plus Australia Post. Qantas does as a contract with Australia Post to move all its international mail. And it was built up some really great friendships and business relationships with a lot of people in the postal business. And we also did defence mail, military mail for the USPS, the United States Postal Service. And really a wonderful time at Qantas, and it's really about the people too. It's the people you meet, the people you work with, the friendships you develop. And that was, not only, obviously it's a great airline, it's a very safe, conscious airline, but it's just all the people, and that's what they took, Qantas in the spirit of Australia. It's those people that really make the job and the work so enjoyable in my time.
And is that how, like, the Red Tail group has come together?
Well, yes, because, there's so many ex-Qantas employees over many years, and while they might meet up with a couple of people locally that they know and develop friendships over the years, the Red Tail Road to 100 was formed to bring all those people together in a common, unison of enjoying friendships and reunions together as Qantas approached the 100 years, which was last year. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we couldn't have this, a lot of the functions, and so we're catching up this year. And that's why there's about 220 people coming to Longreach and Winton this weekend. It's within the 100 years still. Yeah, that's right. Yes. So we've licensed, and that's correct. So there's a wonderful full 3 days of events planned. This is my first trip to Longreach and Winton, so I'm really looking forward and excited to see the Founders Museum and the Stockman's Hall of Fame, and going over to Winton. And I'm also participating in the march on Anzac Day. I had 2 years in national service, so it's really looking forward to and catching up with a lot of other Qantas friends that are around the country, around Australia, all coming together and meeting in Longreach. There's Qantas Charter coming up tomorrow, but I'd never been on the train from Brisbane to Longreach. It was all about seeing the Queensland countryside. Well, obviously I've been on flights all the time. This was something different and another experience. And it has been a great experience being on the train. The 33 of us, I know about 15 people, but I've met new people from around Qantas in the last 24 hours. And so it's been a great train journey. I'm definitely looking forward to going to the museum. And the gala dinner we're having on Sunday night will be really, everybody be sitting down. We're all being asked to wear a touch of red, with the linkage to Qantas and the red colour, the red kangaroo. So both those, and of course Anzac Day is quite a very solemn occasion. In both Longreach and Winton are having a dawn service, and a lot of us are participating in the Anzac Day march in Longreach or Winton. I've chosen to go to Winton on Sunday because I'd never been to Winton, and so I thought, well, I've come all this way. I want to go where Qantas actually started, and the first meeting was held at the Winton Club. Yeah, right. So look, really, and Qantas through its history has been always in the support of the government in war efforts. It's been from World War II onwards, and there's been, I would think, over the many years that Qantas, over the 100 years Qantas has been in existence, to be a lot of men and women who have participated in war while they were still working at Qantas left and joined the service. Hudson Fish and McGuinness were ex-First World War pilots. So that's right. Yeah, and of course they knew how to fly, and they realised the distances within Queensland where they were from, they started to thinking about flying, and that's where they met up with Fergus McMaster, and he formed got the money to start to fund the first company, the start of the company.
My name is John All. I spent 26 years with Qantas. Began my career in Darwin Airport, as a traffic officer. I spent nearly 10 years with them in Darwin, but in the meantime I also did a stint in Sydney at Mascot Airport for 12 months. Returned to Darwin, and then I was there until December the 24th, 1974, when Cyclone Tracy took over. So that really turned the world upside down, you might say. Yeah, Cyclone Tracy struck on the Christmas Eve 1974. We had people coming into the airport on that evening to check in for the flight to Port Moresby. There was a Boeing 707 coming down from Singapore, and all for all their money they were going to come to Darwin. But we also had a 747 stuck up in Hong Kong, who had seen the weather report. They were coming from Hong Kong to Darwin to Sydney, but they bypassed Darwin, so we didn't see the 747. Anyway, in the meantime, at the airport, the place was collapsing all around us. We had a few staff that decided they wanted to go home during the cyclone, and they went home in the eye of the storm. And that was when everything was still, they took off. We had a car parked in the terminal outside the check-in counter where a mate of mine, a traffic officer, when the cyclone passed over at 7 a.m. in the morning, we decided to go home. So, but when I got home, the place was a wreck. My wife was pregnant. We had one baby boy at the time, 18 months. And lo and behold, we sort of bunked down in a garage for a week. But in the meantime, Qantas had organised a rescue aircraft to come to Darwin to pick up all the Qantas family. And after 3 days after the cyclone, they were picked up and flown down to Sydney. So all the families were safe then. But I remained in Darwin for a month, two after that. I got seconded to jury duty. We served one case after the cyclone. And from then, it was a case, there was no more cases because everybody had left Darwin anyway. And in March, it was decided I had to move out anyway. We had no aircraft coming to Darwin. International Airport was closed for 9 months. And I was supposed to go to Brisbane Airport, relocation, but right at the last moment I was given a position in Adelaide in the sales office.
Unfortunately.
And so I went to Adelaide. It was my hometown, so it was all very convenient that way. And so I spent my last 10 or so years, or 16 years with Qantas in Adelaide. And on 23 years I had a great time. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Well, it goes back a long way. I suppose we'll go back about 6 years because we had a reunion in Adelaide, which was for the 50th anniversary of Qantas establishing himself in King William Street, was it? Yes, okay. And that was in 2016 or 2016, and we had a massive turnout for that. And then one of the chief instigators, who's sitting right opposite me here, worked on the scope of this 100 celebration of Red Tail. And so it's been in the drawing board for a long time. But, as we had to wait 12 months from last year, and we come to fruition, here we are now, which is great.
Richard Collard. I joined Qantas in 1967. I had 7 years with Elders Goldsborough Mort in Adelaide, who were the general sales agents because Qantas didn't have an office. And then in 67 they decided to open up their office, and staff at Elders were given the opportunity to go across to Qantas if they wanted to, or stay where they were, and I chose to go across, so I joined in 67. I was there for about 6 months or so, and I didn't like it. There was a small number of staff, whereas where I came from was a huge number of staff. Saw the travel manager at the time and said, I want to come back. And he said, stay where you are, it's a great company. If you want to come back in another 6 months' time, I'm more than happy to have you. It was a bit like a father-son sort of chat. Never went back. And I stayed at Qantas for 35 years. I had 25 in Adelaide, mainly in sales. And then I went to Canberra after a restructure. Wasn't too thrilled about going to Canberra, but as it's turned out, it's been terrific. And I spent the last 6 years as airport manager. Never worked at an airport before, so I knew nothing. The majority of the staff were the Australian Airlines staff. So he was a guy from Qantas coming in, never worked at an airport, so I had a bit of a challenge. But
A lot of learning on the job.
absolutely. I mean, you'd know as much about airports as what I did, because all I did was go through them. But I'd have to say, and I've said it a few times, 35 years, and I enjoyed every minute. It was a fantastic company to work for, and I think the culmination of this particular event that we're on now just shows you how much people value the company.
G'day, Marty Ryan from Queensland Rail, the Executive General Manager of Travel. And it's been a great privilege to be a small part of this great celebration for Redtail 100. We've had the great joy in bringing 33 of these fantastic ex-Qantas staff from all around Australia out to this sensational place here at Longreach, where now lets the party begin. So Queensland Rail converted our Spirit of the Outback into a Qantas Redtail 100 event train. And we brought 33 very enthusiastic and very friendly Qantas, ex-Qantas staff from all around Australia out to this beautiful place at Longreach. And for the last 24 hours, we've been eating, we've been drinking, we've been singing, we've been engaged in trivial pursuit and had a great time together. We've learned a lot more about who we all are, but also this great country of ours. And I taught them a few things about Queensland.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I could once again ask you for your attention. We're now going to have our sort of formal part of the evening. And formality doesn't mean boredom, I hope. I think it means an acknowledgement of why we're here, what all this is about, and what the future of Qantas will be. So it's the past, the present, and the future that we're looking at tonight. We will all have our own reminiscences of our careers with Qantas, of the good times and the bad times, and there have been plenty of both. And each of us will have our own respective memories. And I know that you'll be talking about those to each other, reminiscing. I suspect there will be a little bit of bitching about certain things that have happened. You know, who brought BCG in and who screwed that lot up and da-di-da-di-da. Lots of wonderful, biting memories. I'd just like to recall a couple of mine. I was a very fortunate person in many ways because over the years, as I said, since 1986, I sort of roamed the world. I started in London, and then I was in Belgrade and Bahrain, and back to Australia, and then to the United States, and then back to Australia again. And I know many of you have moved around the world and had amazing experiences and amazing positions in the company over the years. We all dwell, I guess, on the good times and the happy times, and we reminisce about the great moments that we might have had that were very special to us in particular. And if you'll indulge me just for a moment, I'd like to talk about a couple of those special moments. The moments that sort of put you in perspective and make you realize that it wasn't Ken Groves those people were talking to, it was Qantas. I was the manifestation of Qantas in that particular instance, and it was Qantas that gave me the opportunity to do so many wonderful things and so many wonderful experiences, and I know that goes for so many of us here tonight. Magic moments like my 2 hours alone with Princess Diana in that first-class lounge only a couple of months before she died. And I took her onto the aircraft and put her in a seat and said goodbye. And then I went back to the lounge and I'd forgotten that I'd dropped my tag. So I went back onto the aircraft, and by then the other passengers had come on, and she was standing up and she beckoned me over. And I said, "Yes, ma'am." And she said, "You didn't give me a kiss goodbye." Well, I remember that very, very clearly. And I do remember the Elton Johns and the Tina Turners and all those wonderful things that we got involved with over the years. Very much because of a man called Peter Stanley and many others who had the foresight to get us involved with those sorts of activities, the Les Mises and the Phantom of the Operas and all these things that sort of spread our wings in many, many ways. But I would ask you to remember one thing, and I have to take a big deep breath here. Perhaps the most important moment of Qantas in my life was that dreadful day on the 11th in America, and it was the day that my colleague and dear friend Lorita Morabito got on a plane in Boston to go to a sales meeting in Los Angeles. She was on that aircraft that went into the tower. Can we just think about Laura Lee and all the friends that we have lost over the years? Please drink to Laura Lee and absent friends. Absent friends. So much for that. Got that off my chest. I'd like to now start the official part of the program. We do have some speeches, and we've got people who would like to talk to you, and we encourage you to listen to them. As I said, the bar is open and the food is there and will be all night, so we're taking it easy and the grazing continues. So I would like to introduce, first of all, Raphael Toda, the man who is really... Come on up, Raphael. Okay. So much. He doesn't get Tina. Anyhow, Rafi would like to say a few words.
Good evening and welcome, fellow Redtail members. 24 months in the making, impacted by COVID, some touch and go moments, and 2 tour operators later, Longreach, we have arrived. I'd like to acknowledge some of our very special guests, the mayors of Longreach and Winton, Tony Reiner and Gavin Baskett, the CEO of Longreach Council, Mitchell Murphy, a very special welcome to the grandchildren of Sir Hudson Fysh, Rosemary Fordry, David Miles. Would you get up so we can see you? There you go. There they are. Fergus McMaster II, grandson of Fergus McMaster, Sir Fergus McMaster. Elizabeth Fysh, author of the book When Chairmen Were Patriots, the story of Sir Fergus McMaster, and her son David is here as well. Thank you all for joining us. Qantas Group CEO Alan Joyce, Shane Lloyd, John and Alison Gissing, and Captain Grant Holland and his crew, who flew many of you in this morning on the jet. I was going to say private jet. The Redtail Road to 100 initiative started in 2015 with a vision to retain former Qantas staff from around the world to foster lifetime friendships. We have always said this initiative celebrates the Qantas spirit in us. And now the Redtail Road has led us back to our birthplace of Longreach. Congratulations, everyone. Our Redtail membership is up to 2,562 as of today. And tonight, under this magnificent structure, we are privileged to have staff, past and present, representing 8 of the airline's 10 decades. Present are colleagues from almost all departments, with some having over 50 years of service. And speaking of long service, where is Marnie Salusi? Marnie made Australian aviation history in 2019 by being the first flight attendant to reach 50 years of service. So I stand here and ask myself, what would Hudson Fish, Fergus McMaster, and Paul McGuinness and Arthur Baird have to say about our Red Tail initiative and the milestone we have collectively achieved? And what would they have said, what would they have to say about how we serve the company and preserve their legacy for a century? Firstly, I believe they would be proud to know that the culture that they instilled in us has stayed in us. We were gifted with a work ethic that many of us used to forge new careers after Qantas. And yes, here we are, back at its birthplace, to acknowledge what we have always known. We have never stopped calling Qantas our own. COVID-19 caused havoc on our plans in 2020, but our Qantas spirit and inbuilt resilience kicked in, and despite many hurdles, with the support of very many talented people, we have delivered this memorable event for you tonight. As you know, events don't just happen overnight. And a big thanks must go to Fun Over 50s, Tony Brennan and her team, led by Cassie, who all of you know. Where's Cassie? There it is. There's Cassie. Everybody's had to deal with Cassie. Is Tony here? Not yet. Okay. John Vincent and Tony Martin and their staff here at the Qantas Founders Museum, congratulations on a magnificent facility. To Greg Brown, former cabin crew manager, and Daniel Magliari, who have generously organized our entertainment for tonight with the Lion's Den, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy that. And to my good friend Sue Betcher from South Australia, for her most generous offer of the Red Tail capsule that we will be leaving behind. And I will be talking to you a little bit more about that later in the evening. It's important to note that none of this would be possible without the enormous support of our major partner, Qantas. Alan, a heartfelt thank you for your interest and support of the Red Tail Initiative and for your staff's hard work in making this event possible. Thank you very, very much. There are many to thank, but I would like to particularly point out Stephanie Tully, Guy Waddell, Lauren Halliburton, Samantha Wheatley, for their support over the last 24 months. They have been an absolute pleasure to work with. Thank you. I would also like to acknowledge the work of our Red Tail committees from around Australia who rolled up their sleeves and continue to support us in this Longreach project. Peter and Lindy Canane and their event team. Where's Peter? Working, probably. Max Sellerman, Cameron McDougall, John Tian, Ken Groves, Jim Gray, Francis Mellick, Terry Harper, and David Thompson. Guys, thank you so much for a job well done. And finally, I'd like to acknowledge and express my thanks to our worldwide patron, John Fish, who couldn't be here with us tonight. And I also want to acknowledge my Red Tail co-founders, Jim Eames, who also couldn't be here, and Brian Wild and Max Hill. Thank you for your friendship, your vision and guidance, your generosity, and never-ending enthusiasm that has ensured the Red Tail Initiative will have a future well beyond the century. And I believe the success of the Red Tail Initiative and this Longreach event is testament to our Qantas spirit. And whilst we may not be in office, we are certainly not out of influence. I would like to propose a toast to many things, so please hold. First of all, to our founders and the many colleagues who have passed. They are here with us tonight, and many of them because they don't miss an FOC party. The veterans that are among us, we thank you for your service to country and acknowledge you on this, the eve of Anzac Day. To our Red Tail members, all of you, thank you for your contribution to the Qantas Centenary milestone and for keeping the spirit alive through our Red Tail initiatives. And finally, to the current custodians of Qantas, led by Alan Joyce, we acknowledge and congratulate you for your achieving a century of success and wish you the very best as you navigate our Qantas into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Rafi. Very well said. At this stage, I'd like to introduce the two mayors. There must be a moment like this that mayors long for. How often do they have a captive audience in their own respective places of Longreach and Winton? It's their big moment. We thought it was ours, but it's actually the mayor's. Can I introduce, firstly, Tony Rayner, the Mayor of Longreach.
Well, good evening and welcome. What a hard act to follow. And I think all the VIPs were well recognised by those great words, so I won't repeat that, other than to acknowledge your CEO, Alan Joyce. Welcome, Alan. A big heartfelt welcome to each and every one of you, because you are all VIPs. I'd also like to take the opportunity to acknowledge our traditional owners of the country on which we're gathered here tonight, the Inangai people, who were the original custodians of this country, and pay our respect to the elders, past, present and emerging. For those of you that have seen the wonderful Qantas luminescent light show, you'll recognise the part that the Indigenous people played in the formation of this great company, Qantas. In some ways, without those people that assisted the pioneers, the company may well not have developed. Tonight is not about my making a long speech other than to offer a very sincere welcome. I did say hello and greeted many people at the races today. I hope you enjoyed the day. I hope you have a safe time here over the next few days. It is a great honour for us, for Gavin and myself, to welcome you here and to have you here. I'd love to see this as an annual event. And, but look, truly, it's really heartwarming to see each and every one of you here. My wife and I, Vicky, who's here with me tonight, have travelled extensively around the world, and there's nothing more heartwarming when you're feeling a little bit homesick overseas than to look up at the tarmac and see that Qantas symbol of that kangaroo in the red and white. So folks, enjoy the evening. Thank you for the opportunity to say hello and to welcome you to Longreach, and I look forward to enjoying the evening with you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Tony. And next, I would be very, very happy to welcome to the stage Gavin Baskett, Mayor of Winton, where we're all coming tomorrow. Where's...
G'day everyone. How's all going? I hope you've enjoyed the day. Fantastic day at the races, and I see that nice flash aeroplane over there, Alan. Be good to see that in Winton one day, but anyway, you never know. First, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land we gathered tonight and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and also acknowledge Tony Rayner. Thanks, Tony. I've been over here twice this week. Come over for the cruise and dinner on Thursday night. So if I come over here much more often, I'll probably end up getting a rate notice from you. So I better stay away from this place. Alan Joyce, CEO. Great to see you again, Alan. There's probably three big jobs in Australia. There's the Australian cricket captain, the Prime Minister, and then the CEO of Qantas in that order. So it's great to have you out here. And the families of the McMasters and Fish, very, very glad to see you here and great to meet Fergus today. I got presented a frame of your grandfather the other day from the Qantas board, so it was fantastic to meet you. And also the Winton contingent sitting over there, flying the flag for the birthplace. So welcome everyone. The Red Tails, glad you could come out. I know this has been planned for a long time and COVID put a stop on it last year, so it's great to see you all here. And a lot of you probably have jobs that young children dream about, working for Qantas and flying planes or working in planes or with planes. So great that you come out, and hopefully I can get around and have a chat to you tonight. And if not tomorrow, the ones coming over to Winton, you're the lucky members of the Red Tails to get over to across the Thompson to that great country over there. And you're having a little bit of a snippet of the town, you know. You're going to the Wasp Matilda Centre and the club where the first board meeting was held. We've got the Strain Age of Dinosaurs and the Truck Museum, Opals. We've got a lot of stuff over there. So if you have a bit of a look around and plan on coming back, and the people that aren't coming tomorrow, plan a trip for yourselves down the track and get out and have a look at this fantastic country. And also the board, it was fantastic to have the board in Winton the other day at the club there, and to actually sit in that room where the first board meeting was, and said, take yourself back 100 years ago, and there's no bitumen, it's all dirt, and they're sitting around and trying to figure out how to get this airline off the ground and into the future. And I'm sure Alan and Richard and all the board thought it was a fantastic day, and the feedback we got was they really enjoyed it, and we really enjoyed having you, and hopefully the Red Tails can get that same experience tomorrow. So thanks for coming out here and enjoying this fantastic facility here. It's unbelievable to see all these planes here, and I almost think Richard promised an old A380 there the other day when he said they get towards the end of their legs, so you never know. So thanks everybody for coming along, and thanks for giving me 5 minutes on the stage.
So this is a very significant year for us, obviously delayed from last year when this facility was first opened to the public in July, because the museum was closed along with so many other businesses from March until the end of June. Tony and the team opened in July, and we weren't quite sure what sort of year we were going to have. We weren't quite sure if we were going to survive as a business, to be honest. The people of Queensland primarily, and some from south of the border who'd been able to cross while the border was open for a few weeks in June and July, came here, came to this region and spent money, which was fabulous, and had a wonderful time, in our case under the roof, and seeing the Sound and Light show. So we actually ended up with a year that wasn't too bad. It was nothing like we'd budgeted for, but it wasn't too bad a year. However, we couldn't formally open this facility and the Sound and Light show until we felt the conditions were stable enough to do so. So just a month ago, we had the Governor of Queensland and senior government representatives here for a red and white dinner, and this facility was officially opened. And our staff on that occasion, as always, did a fabulous job, like they're doing tonight, serving meals at tables. A fabulous meal that came out of our own restaurant kitchen, as the food is that you're going to receive tonight. And then we have Redtail. So 4 weeks later, we have another huge event and Redtail, and an opportunity to showcase what we have here. The AGM, as I mentioned, is in June. In June, this museum will be 25 years old. So the silver anniversary of the museum. Stage 1 is the original hangar, the 1922 National Heritage listed hangar. That's part of the museum entry, so if you're going over to our museum, you get to go into the main museum building and see all our exhibits. You also get to go into the hangar and see our Catalina. One of our projects is to put a roof over the Catalina, as we've put a roof over these aircraft, so please spend up big again so we can contribute those surpluses towards some of our projects. So as I said, we're separate from Qantas. We have an intellectual property agreement with Qantas that enables us to display the Qantas logo and insignia and sell merchandise and that sort of thing. And we also have and are very grateful for a sponsorship agreement with Qantas. So Qantas provides us with sponsorship support, and that's both cash and in kind. So we've had huge support. Qantas donated the 747. Qantas supported us substantially with the 707, getting it here. Qantas provided fabulous support for our Constellation, both in terms of initially lifting it out of the mud, 25 years of mud at Manila Airport, where it had been stuck for all that time, rotting away. And I was telling Alan Joyce the other day that the Qantas Engineering Aircraft Recovery Team were first on site with us in Manila to dig the aircraft out and lift it and make it towable. And they were last on site with us as this aircraft was towed from the assembly yard, which is over the back here, towed up behind the 707, and then because of these V-pillars here, literally moved sideways into its final position. The roof was constructed with the 747 and the 707 in situ. Talk about heart in mouth, 12 months of watching on video camera 400 tonnes of steel being lifted above our precious artefacts here, but the Connie was moved in later. So thank you again to Qantas for the continued support that you provide, particularly in this case in kind. You may be aware that we had the Qantas board here earlier this week with Alan and some of the senior management team, and Alan officially opened the 747-200 upper deck Captain Cook Lounge, which some of you would be familiar with. And I saw Bubble Haynes earlier on in her fabulous Poochie uniform, and I did make her an offer for that uniform, but she has already promised it. She has already promised it to me. We'll definitely have to get a photo of you, Bubbles, over there in that lounge, in that uniform. Absolutely fabulous. And that was, as I said, opened by Alan following that replica being provided to us on long-term loan. So we have, whilst this is not a Qantas Connie, we do have these remnants of an original Qantas Connie in the hangar, and it's a very interesting site, and there's a great story behind that recovery, and it's that passion and that determination and that drive that fuels this organisation. And as was said earlier, it's the same passion, determination and drive that fueled Qantas from day one to 100 years later, and we draw on that passion and drive and determination, and that inspires us and our great team here to do wonderful things, and you're going to experience that tonight. So thank you.
Actually, I'll hold it. So thank you very much, everybody. Can I first of all acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, the Inangai people, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I was recently reading Hudson Fysh memoirs about the starting of Qantas over 100 years ago. And one thing that he mentioned in the memoirs is that he was probably the first person to carry an Indigenous person in February 1921. And I think over the 100 years, we've been very positive and very much a big supporter of Indigenous culture, the oldest continuous culture in the world. And one of the most memorable moments for me as CEO is when we flew Emily Dreaming, a brand new 787, directly from Seattle into Alice Springs, and the family of the artists were waiting to see the aircraft arrive when sunrise happened. And this family came from Utopia, around 100 kilometers north of Alice Springs, and they'd never been on an aircraft before. And they got on this aircraft, which had never had anybody on it before. And it was one of the most amazing things of being part of, and seeing people in tears to see their mother, their grandmother, their great aunt story on an aircraft was something else. And that was the aircraft, the 787 we used to fly from Perth to London. The only two continents in the world that never had a connection before. The only two continents in the world that never had a direct service before. And it was Emily Dreaming that did it. And it was Qantas 100 years later that was supporting and promoting the oldest continuous culture in the world. Now, this has been an amazing week for me and for the board and for the management. So coming here a bit later than we had planned to celebrate the 100th anniversary. And can I thank the mayors of Longreach and Winton? When you come to this part of the world, you realise that everybody has a passion for Qantas. And Hudson Fish summed up, I think, the story of Qantas with saying it was conceived in Cloncurry, it was born in Winton, it grew up in Longreach, it was educated in Brisbane, and it was given to the world in Sydney. Talk about a politician, he made everybody happy with that comment. And it's great that so many people feel passionate about this amazing brand. And I thank the two mayors for the hospitality in the last week. And I'll mention three highlights for us as a board and us as a management team. The first was that the board met in the same room that the first Qantas board meeting took place in February 1921. So 100 years and a couple of months later than that board meeting. The board sat in the same room, probably on the same chairs and the same table. That is amazing, and it was very poignant that 100 years later, we could actually celebrate that meeting in the exact same place. What a piece of history. So thank you to Winton for hosting that. And the second and third memories for me are about the future. So in Winton, we went to a primary school, and the kids were asked to say what they wanted Qantas to look like going forward and ideas about how we should run the business. And they came up with some great ideas. Some of the kids thought that we needed a gym on aircraft. And believe it or not, on the 350-1000 that we're looking at to do Project Sunrise, I'll talk about that a little bit more later, one of the ideas was to have an exercise area, so the kids were ahead of us in that idea. The kids thought it would be great on regional aircraft to have first-class seats at Jetstar airfares. That's not going to happen. That'll make us bankrupt. We already have financial trouble, but we're not going to do that, which we said to them. But they were so full of passion, so full of wanting to work for this airline and being part of this airline. It was great. And then an amazing moment, and Tony Martin, I think, organised it. His son was part of the choir that sang "I Still Call Australia Home" in front of the 1922 hangar for the board and the management, and I think we were all in tears seeing that young kids singing that song in front of the hangar that was here since 1922. Thank you, Tony, for organising that in particular. Now, I was thinking, and particularly when we were driving from Longreach to Winton, which is 2 hours, and I know some of you are doing it tomorrow, what a story it was for setting up an airline back then here in this space. You know, 100 years later, we have bitumen roads, as the Mayor of Winton talked about, but back then, that 2-hour journey would have taken weeks, to get there between the two. So setting an airline up was an amazing task. And when you read Hudson Fish's book about that first days, there's some similarities and some differences. When he started the airline back then, the first year was barnstorming. And what Qantas did to survive was charged around £3. You'll see this on the video a bit later. £3 to do a 10-minute flight. And it was a flight to nowhere. It took off and it landed. 100 years later, to survive, we've done flights to nowhere. And we've earned money out of it. So they had the idea 100 years ago. I think we nicked it again, so that was good. Back then, Paul McGuinness did loop-the-loops for an extra $2. I was saying to my marketing guys, could we got more out of the flights to nowhere if we did that? I don't think so, but we could have tried. They were saying when they were starting back then, there were issues with fuel security. Now we take jet kerosene for granted. Back then, they used motor oil, motor spirits, but had water in it. And so the way they made it pure is they had a felt hat they poured the spirits into before they got on an aircraft. They had security issues, but not like we have. We spend tens of millions of dollars on cybersecurity and physical security. Back then, according to Hudson Fish, they took the deadbeat from the town they were flying to and got him to mind the aircraft overnight because cows were biting the wings. And we had also the issue with souvenir hunters robbing parts of the aircraft. I don't think we have those problems today. And back then, there were issues with people writing graffiti on aircraft. People wrote their names on aircraft. In fact, the first aircraft registration Qantas had was a British registration, which we had at the time, which somebody wrote below it because the initials spelled the right thing. Go away, you bloody fool, because it was GAUBF. And so we probably had a history of the first graffiti ever written on an aircraft, maybe the oldest graffiti ever written on an aircraft. But the first that Qantas did back then were exceptional. And what I loved was the entrepreneurial spirit of the company. And we came up, how many people here were at the races today? So Qantas figured that it was a great idea to turn up at the races because you got people that were a little bit drunk, little people that were willing to spend money, and we could do joy flights at the races to keep the business going. So the Qantas founders went around the country, race meeting to race meeting, doing that as a living. And then they figured that a great way of actually getting ancillary revenue was for the beauties of the town, for the hostesses that were respected, to deliver chocolates to them. It's a bit like Qantas Wine and Qantas Ancillary Services now, and they created a parachute to drop boxes of chocolates to these stations around the country. And it was a great way of earning ancillary revenue. I think Qantas today still matches that. They also came up with the great idea of going into sporting events. And Qantas, I think, was the first airline in the world to allow somebody to get on the aircraft and shoot wild turkeys on an aircraft. I don't think CASA would allow us to do that today. But a lot of you, how many people here were crew or pilots on Qantas aircraft? Crew, yeah, there's a few. So the first hotel accommodation for Qantas was a bit different than you were used to. Hudson Fish talks about arriving at a hotel that he thought they were going to stay overnight, and he saw smoke coming from the windows. And out of that hotel, they had a mosquito problem. And he decided to have cow dung in the rooms, smoking, to get rid of the mosquitoes. So he ended up sleeping under the billiard tables that night to survive it. Qantas crew accommodations come a bit better than that over the years. And probably the most amazing thing is the Qantas Club back then looked very different because we were in this environment with thousands of mosquitoes. They actually created a tent. that actually had smoke in it to keep the mosquitoes out of it. It had no Neil Perry food or expensive champagne, but at least keep people away from mosquitoes. Talk about the innovation of the first Qantas club that ever existed. I'll wrap up just with a couple of stories, because I thought everybody here has a story, and I just wanted to wrap up at how important this place is for me, because I've come here now 4 times, and every time I've come here, the place has expanded, and I think Qantas, as the quality airline it is, needs a museum that John, Vincent, and Tony have put a huge amount of passion in, that actually oozes quality, and I think this facility does. And a couple of stories, as we watch around here and the aircraft are here, they all have a story for everybody. And I ran into one of our pilots who said he flew on 3 of the aircraft here, the DC-3s, the 707s, and the 747s. And I know you will all have a story about it. But my stories, I think, for me, that represent the passion that people have around this country, start with the DH-50 that is in the hangar, the 1922 hangar. That was a gift from Airbus as a replica of the aircraft that Qantas built, the only airline that Qantas built. The only airline in the world that built, I think, its own aircraft, and you'll see that tonight on the light show. But I was here when that was given to the museum in 1990. And the Governor-General, Quentin Price, was here to launch it. And somebody had the crazy idea that we would use a real bottle of champagne to bounce off the aircraft and name the aircraft and give it to the museum. But the aircraft's made of plastic. And Quentin Price threw it at the aircraft. It bounced off the aircraft. It came back, and she caught it in her hand. She threw it again, caught it in her hand, threw it again, before somebody realized we could kill the Governor-General. And then we went up and said, maybe we should break it with a hammer, which we did. That night on Channel 9, because Quentin Bryce is from Longreach, that night on Channel 9, I read, it actually played the story and said they build them tough in Longreach. But that aircraft, also on the 85th anniversary, I was here, and a woman came up to me and said that her mother was the seamstress here in Longreach, and she remembers her mother making the canvas to put on that aircraft because it's made of aircraft. Can you imagine that living history of seeing the aircraft being constructed and remembering that this length of time later? We had people that lived that history still living in Longreach. What an amazing story is about Qantas, that is. The other story that we have is the Catalina. That is the reason why we have Project Sunrise. That aircraft flew the amazing double sunrise flights. And we decided to name our project to fly from Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, non-stop to the east coast of the United States and to London after the amazing 32 hours in air that those aircraft did. If you haven't got a chance to do it, go and visit it, because it's the most inspirational story I think we have about Qantas. The fact that we had over 600 passengers operate from 1942 to 1945, didn't lose an aircraft, and kept Australia with the UK connected is the inspiration for us doing it. And we will do Project Sunrise. We're hoping to revisit it again this year and have aircraft arriving in either 23 or 24 to do that amazing feat. And it is the last frontier in aviation, and Qantas is the only airline that can do it, and it will do it, which is a great credit to our business. I'll wrap up on 2 other stories that for me are inspirational. The other story is around the 747. We should have had a year of celebration. We should have had a year where we flew that aircraft around the country. Should have had a year where a lot of you that have worked on the aircraft had the chance to experience it. We couldn't do that because of COVID. We had to cut short the life of that aircraft because of COVID. And saying goodbye to that aircraft was extremely emotional for everybody that was involved in it. But its departure still did amazing good. We were able to sell the tickets on the aircraft, again, the flights to nowhere. And we were able to raise $50,000 for this museum with people that wanted to travel on the last flights associated with the aircraft. And the aircraft was given a good send-off in a COVID world. So thank you for everybody who was involved in it, and thank you for your money that's allowed us to show the Captain Cook's Lounge in the museum, which I hope you will see later on. Can I also say, linked to that is again an amazing story. John Vincent mentioned the fact that we filmed that 100-year safety video here. Two stories linked to that, which I think sums up Qantas. The young pilot that represented Hudson Fish, Paul McGuinness, that drove the Model T that you mentioned up to the Avro, told me when we launched the ad, he was so petrified because he says, I'm happy to fly Dash 8s, I'm happy to fly aircraft, but when somebody gives you the keys of a Model T, a very expensive car that is irreplaceable, and tells you to drive up to Qantas's first aircraft, and you're worrying about crashing into it all the way, and you do it safely, that is Qantas and allows you those opportunities. And that young man did that amazing opening scene on the ad. But the other thing that sums up Qantas, when you see that lounge, the Captain's Cook Lounge on the aircraft, is that we know our engineers have attention to detail. We know our pilots have attention to detail. We know that's what makes Qantas the safest airline in the world and the best airline in the world. But what you'll be actually quite proud of is the attention of detail that our marketing team have. Because the panels on that display were taken from a Qantas 747 in the Mojave Desert, so it could replicate it. And the cushions and the fabric on the seats, we went back to the company in Geelong that produced them and asked them could they remake them, and they did, out of passion for Qantas. Remade the same interiors that were there in the 1970s just for that display. That's the attention to detail that's on it. It's a fantastic display, and you'll be, anybody that's flown on it and been there would know it replicates exactly what was there in the 1970s, which is a real credit to Qantas and our marketing team. Can I finally wrap up, because I know I'm talking too long, because Rafi's here to get me off the stage. Can I finally wrap up by just saying, while this has been a very difficult year for Qantas and a difficult year for a lot of our employees, one of the great things about this airline is that it does reinvent itself and it does survive through the most amazing periods of crisis in its history. So Qantas, while it's been hit by COVID-19, is in a better position than any other airline on the globe. It's got a balance sheet better than any other airline. And 100 years ago, to start up Qantas, there was 2 equity raisings, a £7,000 equity raise by its founders, half of which came in from 4 people. And to survive through 21, another equity raise that raised £15,000, which is tens of millions of dollars in today's money for an untried business. And Qantas shareholders last year gave the company $1.4 billion to get through COVID. They're 70% Australians. 70% of this company is investment superannuation funds. The 15,000 investors back 100 years ago were the barman in Longreach that put $10 in. They were the little people in Western Queensland that did it. The people that are putting into the airline now to let it survive COVID are the same people, but across the country. They are the people that believe the iconic national brand is worthwhile saving. And while we've taken a hit, we're in a position where we're optimistic. Domestic is nearly back to 100% and will be back to more than 100%. Trans-Tasman is opening up, and international, we hope, will start once people are vaccinated. And we will put back the A380s in the air, and we will order the aircraft for Sunrise. And we're going to do this year a fleet replacement for the domestic fleet, probably the only airline in the world that's brave enough and capable enough to buy over 100 aircraft. We're in a great position compared to the rest of world aviation, and it's thanks to 100 years of innovation. It's thanks to 100 years of passion. It's thanks to 100 years of people like people in this room. Thank you for your contribution to Qantas. Thank you for getting this airline in such a great position that it can stand the biggest crisis in world aviation and probably come out of it stronger than any airline in the world. It's a credit to everybody in this room, and I personally want to thank you for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you for a very inspiring and hopeful outlook for us all. Rafi, could you come up here for a moment? Alan, I'd like you to make a presentation to Rafi because, as we've already said, Raf has been the rock behind the organisation of this, along with Brian and Max and Jim. And on behalf of us all, Rafi, we'd like Alan to present this to you with our thanks. It's been an absolutely wonderful experience for you, I know. You have worked harder than anyone could ever have hoped, and you have achieved what we are here tonight. So can you all give a huge cheer for Rafi Toda?
And Rafi, we've got an amazing gift for you. I think this is a piece of history because in the historic 1922 hangar, there was a floor that had wood floor, and it was ripped up. And part of those floorboards, that wood, is this plaque. Wow. So this goes back to one of the earliest moments in Qantas history. And Rafi, can I also say, reinforce what Ken said, thank you for being the force behind this. You've worked unbelievably well with our people. You've been a passion to get the retired staff and people that have an involvement with Qantas together to celebrate this. And I'm really proud of all the work that you've done on this. And I'm really proud that you're getting such an amazing gift. And it's such an amazing piece of history of Qantas. Well done, Rafi, and thanks for everything that you've done.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all very much. But I didn't expect this at all. Thank you to all of you for the organization. Thank you, Ken. This award is yours too. So thank you all very much. Thank you.
My name is Betsy Fish, and my late husband was the grandson of Fergus McMaster and also the nephew of Hudson Fish.
How was it like being here in Longreach for this event tonight?
Well, it's fabulous. I always love coming back to Longreach, but to be here tonight for this event is really special. It's equal to any other Qantas event I've ever attended, so it's excellent.
Is it specifically for Longreach or just being invited to any Qantas event that's here and where it was founded?
Oh, well, I think it's so special to be here where it was founded because I've just come from Winton too and went into the boardroom where the first ever board meeting of Qantas took place, and it's quite awe-inspiring to think that 100 years ago this company had its very small beginnings there. Yeah.
So how far have you travelled to be here today?
Well, we flew to Longreach and then hired a car and went right out to Cloncurry and back to Winton and here. So however far that is, I'll get that news when I give the hire car back, I think.
So where did you travel from?
From Brisbane, from Kangaroo Point, yes, that's where I've retired to. But my heart's still in Western Queensland, yes.
So did you grow up out in Western Queensland?
I did, yes. I grew up on my parents' property between Kainoona and McKinley. Yeah. So I spent a lot of years at boarding school and university, but that was my home, so yeah.
And do you have any other comments about tonight and the reunion that the Red Tail have hosted for here tonight for the 100 years?
Yes, it seems to have been quite a sentimental occasion for a lot of people here tonight, because Qantas is like that. It seems to engender a culture of loyalty and affection with all its employees. So it's a demonstration of that tonight, I think.
Yeah, amazing. And Aaron, do you have anything to add as well?
That was it.
My name's Alan Joyce and I'm the Qantas Group Chief Executive.
Yeah, amazing. And how do you feel about being here in Longreach tonight to celebrate the 100 years?
Absolutely amazing. We're here with over 200 amazing former Qantas staff that have contributed to the country for now 50 years, some of them.
Yeah.
So it's actually an amazing night.
Yeah. And has there been like a massive highlight of the week of week? You've been here since Wednesday.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of highlights in the week that we've had. You know, from being in Winting in the first boardroom, having the current board meet literally 100 years after the first board met. That was amazing. Having the kids in the Winton School give us ideas about the future, and having the kids from Longreach sing us "I Still Call Australia Home" here in the 1922 hangar. They're highlights. But seeing all of our employees with the passion they have for the company, the history they have for the company, and for them seeing that portrayed on a 747 in the most amazing light show, they were blown away, and the feedback has been amazing.
Yeah, amazing. Do you have anything you'd like to ask?
Yeah, I think that's about it.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Have you been associated with the Red Tail group for long, besides being an ex-employee perhaps? Or?
So with the Red Tail Group, we've been working with them now for some time. And they've been passionate in trying to make sure we celebrate 100 years. We got delayed a few times. Amazing group. And one of my personal friends, Ken Groves, was the guy who twisted my arm for Qantas to put all the support into this. And thanks to Ken, Qantas has put a lot of support behind this group, and rightly so, because we need to celebrate their contribution to an amazing 100 years history.
I have one more question. Do you have a favourite plane in the Qantas fleet?
I do. I have a couple of them. I actually love the 747 because, believe it or not, I came to Australia in the first trip as an employee of Aer Lingus working in Ireland. I came on my first trip to Australia on Qantas on a 747 in the early 90s. So that's my first memory of Australia. Most people say the first memory of feeling like they're at home, feeling like they're in Australia is getting on a Qantas aircraft, whether that's in London, whether that's in New York, whether that's in Singapore. That's your first memory. That was mine.
Yeah.
And then the second thing I have a real passion about, which I think is an amazing aircraft, is the Catalina, because that double sunrise flight is led to the inspiration for us doing Project Sunrise. And our aircraft's just now here. And I did the first flight on a test flight from London to Sydney, and we did see a double sunrise on that flight. And we arrived on the day at the Ross Smith. You heard about his trip.
Yeah.
So his flight arrived 100 years to the day in Darwin that Qantas did the London-Sydney non-stop, seeing two sunrises as a test flight for double sunrise.
Yeah.
And it was a coincidence. We didn't plan it. Just happened to be that day. And we arrived on that 100-year anniversary of Ross Smith's flight to Darwin, the first flight between the UK and Australia.
Yeah, amazing. And do you have any other comments you'd like to add about this tonight and the reunion of the Centenary?
I'd just say it's just been an amazing, positive night. The mayors have been fantastic, Winton and Longreach. And Qantas is so happy to be part of Western Queensland. I know everybody debates, where was it born, where did it grow up? The fact that we're Western Queensland, that's where it came from. And the one memory I would say that I said tonight is that in our second equity raise in 1921, we raised £15,000, and the barman in Longreach gave £10 to get Qantas going.
Yeah, wow.
That's the local community got us started.
Yeah.
And we last year asked for an equity raise, and it was a bit more, $1.5 billion. But it was the same thing. It was the pension funds of the Australian public that helped Qantas going.
Yeah.
So I think the bookends of 100 years are amazing. And thanks to that barman and those people 100 years ago, Qantas is here today. And thanks to people's super funds, we're here today.
Yeah, amazing.
Thank
you
you.
so much for that.
Can you just introduce yourself to Kate? My name's Alan Joyce. Obviously,
Yep. My name is Alan Joyce and I'm CEO of the Qantas Group.
My name is Rafael Toda, and I'm one of the co-founders of Redtail.
Yeah. And what was your position in Qantas for, you were working with Qantas for quite a few
Well, I had a
years.
number of positions in Qantas from when I started in what you now call a call center, we used to call reservations.
Yeah.
And then I finished off in one of the subsidiaries of Qantas, the resorts division, where we marketed and owned 5 island resorts on the Great Barrier Reef, and I was the director of sales and marketing for that for those 5 islands, based in Brisbane.
So how long has that been in the planning for?
This has been in the planning for quite some time. It all depends on what you call planning. I mean, in the detailed planning of it, 2 years, 2.5 years. COVID hit. You know, we had to stretch it. We're supposed to be here in May of 2020, and then we postponed it to today.
So how long have you wanted to do this event?
Oh, okay. So we started the initiative. The Redtail Road to 100 initiative started in 2015. And we got together the 4 founders, and we discussed it, and we said we need to get as many Qantas people from around the world as we can together under one umbrella to give us a platform to be able to have the friendship, regain the friendship and rekindle the friendship that we had many years ago. So the Redtail is all about the Qantas spirit in us.
Yeah.
No matter how long ago we left.
So what does it mean to be here tonight in Longreach to celebrate the centenary?
I think that's the most emotional and the most charged experience we've all had. We've all looked forward to this for 2 years, and now we're here. Many of us can't believe it. We have a charter from Sydney, a 737 charter, which Qantas has helped us get. Qantas has been a major backer of this initiative, and I was very pleased to hear that Alan was very pleased at what he saw and how passionate we were. Because remember, we're all volunteers.
Yeah.
We've done all this on our own dime, and to be able to pull this off, I think, has been an enormous effort on so many of our chapters, so many of our members, and despite COVID, we still managed to get around 250 here tonight.
Yeah, amazing.
Well, I never expected the recognition that I got from Alan, and the recognition, yes, it was to me. However, I feel that it was more to do with everybody's effort, everyone who participated in this, especially in the planning stages. But not only that, it's also the members. You see, to become a member of Redtail and to have the passion to remain a member for 5 years before getting here, 6 now, it says something about our culture, the culture that was instilled in us, and also the work ethic that we took with us to other jobs that we got when we left Qantas. And many of us were very successful in our other pursuits after Qantas. We have to give thanks to the museum for everything that they put on today. The town of Longreach and how they've welcomed us, and the town of Winton when we get there tomorrow, right? In my speech, I had to thank people that are about to do the work, because I know how much work they've got to do tomorrow. So that's something that we're going to be very proud to have achieved. Again, tomorrow I'm going to be acknowledging a lot more the organizers of this event. And all the people that put so much work into the Longreach, what we call the Longreach project, right? But of course, I have to thank my founders, my co-founders, Brian Wild and Max Hill and Jim Eames, who shared my vision, who inspired me to make this all happen. To push further, to move the boundaries from just Australia to the international market. And thanks to them, we've got so many members in the US, in Africa, in Europe, and in the UK, and of course in the Pacific.
My name's Terry Harper, and I'm from Sydney. I worked for Qantas for about 33 years, and the last 10 or 12 years of my career, I looked after international contracts and agreements for ground handling on behalf of Qantas.
That's pretty high up in the chain, really, isn't it?
Well, not really, but it paid pretty well at the time.
So, Terry, so you came on the plane, on the charter plane.
Yes, I did.
Tell us about that experience and what was the feeling on the plane overall with everyone?
Sure.
Was it like anticipation or
there was
excitement?
a fair bit of anticipation because, as you know, this has been put off for quite a few times now, and finally we get the occasion where we were going, and it was going to be Anzac Day. So the flight wasn't as full as we expected. It was only about 70 packs on board, but we made the best of it. It was a great flight up. Unfortunately, it was a dry flight, and we've been promised that tomorrow on the way back that there will be champagne flowing.
Excellent. And what's it like to catch up with all these people, these ex-Qantas people, across this weekend? What's your experience been, and what do you think everyone else has been through, sort of thing?
Sure. Look, I think it's been wonderful actually, because there's been people I haven't seen for quite a few years that I've met up with again on this trip. Some of us have been involved for quite a while. We knew we were going to catch up anyway. But the other part for me has been the veteran side, where I'm meeting people, veterans within Qantas that I didn't know even existed before. And we've had a chance to catch up and talk, and we marched today. So it's been a wonderful catch up from the veteran side and also from the Qantas side.
So tell us about that veteran side. What's it like to come to a small country town in the middle of nowhere and march here instead of where you might usually?
Yeah, look, in one word, fantastic. It's been fabulous. Chris Hamilton here has put on a fantastic show. The dawn service, the actual parade and the speeches after the parade, the children, it was just fantastic. Comparing it to Sydney, well, look, it's a lot bigger, no doubt about that, and it's a bigger march, but this was really something special and something I'll always remember.